All right. All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Abdel Fain. I'm the president and founder of CSMP. Um, Thank you for being here tonight with us. I can tell you CSMP has been quite a journey. We've been around for just about 2 years now, but we started out in Chicago, which is where our headquarters is, surprisingly, where I also live. So we founded CSMP on several grounds. One is promoting education of cybersecurity. Number two is making cybersecurity resources accessible to everyone for free. And the three is a big focus on women and minority. So we all know the story, cybersecurity. It's about, I think, 2 or 3 million open positions out there today. So a lot of organization, they need people, and there's just not enough people in the field. So we founded CSMP really in the hope that we'll have guest speakers like Andrew, who's going to talk about identity and access management today, right? We want to have these individuals come on our platform and just share the knowledge with everyone. So before I pass it off to Andrew, feel free to check out our website if you already haven't. It's csmp.org. We also have a LinkedIn page, Instagram, Twitter. Feel free to follow us on any of those social media. And of course, if you enjoy our content, if you enjoy the things that we do at CSMP, please donate to us at csmp.org/donate. We are a nonprofit. Everything we offer to our members is 100% free at no charge, right? So it does take a lot of work to keep the organization running. So if you can donate anything, please go ahead and do so. And our next event is September 9th. It's our monthly CISO series. If you haven't heard of this series yet, it's where we invite CISOs, executive from the industry, who come and share their experience with our audience. And this is your opportunity to, get in front of a industry leader and ask them questions, right? Whether you're an engineer who's trying to understand, how the industry is maneuvering around certain cyber threat, or if you're someone who's trying to get into cybersecurity and you want to ask them how they got to where they are today, right? So this is your opportunity to interact with an executive. So the next one is on September 9th. You can go ahead and RSVP today. It's on our meetup. And I think it should be coming up to on our LinkedIn promotion and other social medias. So check that out. And last but not least, I would like to thank our sponsors, Guardicore, Security Innovation, Elastic, and Contrast Security. So thanks to these organizations, we're still in business today. We're still able to operate. We're still able to, do the work that we do and bring all of our content to our members for free. So if you haven't gotten a chance yet, again, you can find these on our website. Also, feel free to check out our sponsors. They are themselves cybersecurity organizations. So feel free to check that out. And with that said, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Andrew. Andrew, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for being here today and teaching us about identity and access management. So with that said, I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Please, if you can't, let me know. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen, and let's get started. So 1 second. All right. Help everybody. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Just you guys can raise your hand or give me a thumbs up or a chat. That's fine too.
Yep. I can.
All right. So, all right. Thank you so much. So, good morning for some, good afternoon for some others, and good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I am very honored to be here. 54 people. I was hoping maybe like 10 people. So I'm very excited to do this for everybody. Lori, I started comments about entry level and companies not really higher entry level. My hope is this webinar can get people who think about identity access management and say, you know what, maybe I can do this, right? Because a lot of it is conceptual, best practices from that perspective. So my hope again is if after this, something might help you and others say, you know what, maybe this is what I want to do, and help you get to that hump to maybe pass that entry level, or at least have the understanding of what companies looking for, especially in the IAM space. And again, I'll go over that a lot in detail. So let me go ahead and get started. So let me show you it's working. Okay. So again, thank you so much for being here. The agenda for this topic, or IAM, really is just IAM 101, or Identity Access Management 101. What I really want to help convey to everybody joining this webinar is don't have to be technical to be successful here. I am not technical. Well, I didn't start as technical for a case perspective. I come from more of a business perspective, functional, understanding how things going, tester, and I'll talk about it more in next upcoming slides. So again, my focus here is to help educate those and say, you know what, I don't have to be a coder. I don't need to know Python or Java to really get into cybersecurity, which I know a lot of people see here today. So the agenda for today is going to talk about a little bit about me. No, not too much, because I think everybody cares more about IAM, not really about me. But hopefully my credentials fits everything that you should listen to me. We'll talk a little bit more about the different facets of IAM, right? There's authentication, authorization. We'll talk about the different branches. There are multiple branches of IAM. Again, there are multiple companies that are really hiring for each specific branch. So I'll give you a little bit of background about what those branches are. Maybe that might trigger something. Say, you know what, maybe that's something I want to look into more. There's common terms you might have heard of if in your workspace or around about IAM. I'm hoping to kind of talk about the more common ones that you might hear today. There's governance, right? We'll talk more about governance and really what that means. Then on some of the channels, I noticed in Slack, for example, for this organization, there's some major players, right? There's your Oktas, your Pings. I'll talk a little bit more about those companies and talk about how they play a role in IAM. Maybe some of them you've heard of, maybe some of them you haven't, right? So again, this is such a big space that I want to show you some of the big players, but some other ones too that you might have heard of. And then the final part I kind of want to talk about is how do I get started? So how do I know more? How do I join groups to get more information, or how do I, listen to podcasts that talk more about IAM? I want to talk more about that, even certifications, just to think about that and let you know that, again, IAM is growing from that space. So hopefully that can give you that information. So let's talk about who I am. So obviously I'm Andrew. I am a business analyst / project manager for a company called Agile. We're like a professional services. We have 3 service lines. One of them is identity service line, which obviously I'm a part of. So for a BA, for my role, I'm not just about requirements. Some of you who maybe understand what a business analyst do, we aren't just requirement gatherers. We're thought leaders. We think about processes. We help re-engineer processes. We help drive innovation with companies. We're the middleman between top level CISOs or CEOs, even to developers. So we wear a lot of hats, right, from that perspective. And of course, project managers, I run projects. So, very straightforward. So there's a lot of moving parts in my position today. So a little bit about me. So I've been doing IAM for about 7 years now in both the government and commercial space. I've done different implementations and development for both clients. Today, I do more commercial work for different commercial clients, which is a different breath of fresh air from that perspective. So it's nice to change the pace from the government way, because I do live in the DC metropolitan area, which is a lot of government focus because of the agencies around here. But again, most of my work is commercial, which is nice. So as I said earlier, I really help stand up identity access management for most companies. What I do a lot is more understanding their current process. If they're a organization that wants to build from the ground up, like they don't have an IAM practice, give them best practices, help them get to that mature level. Or those who are more, they have an older system, and I help build them to a new modernized system. So that's a couple of things that I do. And I really help guide that, working with developers and of course stakeholders on the government side and commercial side. So This may sound weird for some people. I love learning processes of different companies. I just love to understand how companies work and operate. It's something that's fun for me. So I think that makes my job a lot easier just to really understand that from that perspective. And then finally, just on a side note, just not work. I love sports. That's a big thing for me. I used to play lacrosse in college, and I still play today for adult lacrosse, which is fun. It keeps me active. And of course, I'm a father of two great little boys, so it's nice change of pace from what I do today. They definitely keep me on my toes. So here's just some certifications that I have. Again, certs are just certs. I don't want everybody to think about, oh man, I have to have these certifications to be successful. That's not true. This is more just like hard work, just to kind of show like I kind of know what I'm talking about. Obviously, everybody knows the CISP, the Security Plus, being a business analyst, the CSM or the Certified Scrum Master. It's nice to have because, again, Agile is kind of like the big word for every companies today. So it's nice to know that. The bottom two right here that you see here, they're just two vendor-specific ones. One is CyberArk. I'll talk more about that later. And then, of course, SailPoint, which is, again, these are the big players I'm talking about in my agenda slide. So, again, I'm hoping just to help educate that. So those are just more just say, hey, I've done the work, I've done the training. I kind of know what I'm talking about from those perspectives. So just some credentials there, just help clients to trust me. So if you want to get a hold of me, LinkedIn is probably the most ideal. Please connect with me. I love talking about IAM. If you want to connect, ask more questions, if you want to just see, I did do another video before on some VA work. It's on my LinkedIn profile. Just so we can talk, please do. My Twitter account here too. My Twitter account is more sports related. So if you want to get some fun, make fun of me from sports, you can follow me or, make fun of me. I do here and there tweet about cybersecurity and IAM, but it's mostly for sports stuff. So again, if you want to make fun of me, you can feel free to definitely do that. So let's talk about really what is IAM, right? What is identity access management? So really what it is Gartner, which is think of them as like an analyst company, right? They do a lot of analytics for different business functions. One of them is cybersecurity. And they define identity access management as just a discipline that enables the right individuals to access the right resource at the right times for the right reasons. So in plain terms, really what that means is I want to be able to know or understand a person, who they are, what rights do they have at a certain time or date. That's kind of in a gist what IAM is, right, from that perspective. And again, in the next upcoming slides, I'll talk really more about in depth, really what all that means. But really, again, I want to know what permissions I have to do today, or when did I log in, for example, right? All these really make up IAM or identity access management. Also, just be aware, I'm trying to monitor the chat too at the same time, but, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll try to address them afterwards. But again, if there's something present, just let me know, raise your hand. I'll try to answer those as best I can. Just so feel free, I'm not ignoring you. I just want to try to get through this. Then, definitely answer your questions. So, but please just feel free to drop in the chat and I'll definitely try to answer the best I can. So one of the first things of IAM is authentication, right? So really what we want to talk about is really what is authentication? Really what authentication is, which is really a big part of IAM, is really talking about, how do you prove who you are, right? We know there are certain ways and methods that we use to really authenticate ourselves, right? Some of us, when we log into work, some of you who are working today, you probably log into your computer, right? How did you do it? We log into our smartphones, right? How do we log into our smartphones? Some things are very archaic. So for example, using a password. Using a password is the standard, I guess, the way you want to talk about it. A lot of companies use it today. You log into your bank account, you log into, you pay your energy bill, anything, right? A lot of it is using a password, which is what a lot of companies use today. It's simple and easy, but also it's the most easy prone to get hacked, for example, right? Because, a lot of people today, and you probably see them in videos, they make your passwords simple, right? Password 1, password 2, whatever. Sometimes passwords get reused, right? Which causes a lot of issues. A lot of the breaches that you probably have heard today, a lot of them come from passwords that haven't been really changed in a long time, and they're admin passwords. So, it's a start, but it's not like there are other ways to authenticate yourself. So another way is biometrics. And like I said earlier, we talked about our phones, your iPhones or your Androids, use your thumb, use your face now. There are some places where you can go to like a building and use your palm, for example. Those are all biometrics, even voice recognition, Alexa, right? Hey, Google, all those. Hopefully I just opened somebody's phone right there by accident. I do apologize if that's the case, but those are ways to authenticate yourself, right? It's just a different way, in addition to using a password, to really make sure you are who you are. Because unless you're Men in Black, and you kind of burn your fingerprints, it's really hard to fake yourself in terms of like using those perspective, right? It's not 100% foolproof, but it's a lot better, more secure than using password. Other ways you can do is you can use these things called YubiKeys or security tokens. These are physical tokens that are used today. And really what you do is you can stick this into your computer and then you can kind of authenticate yourself using your finger. So if you look at the screen here, this little gold plate right here goes into your USB port. And basically once you do that, you can use this little button here, or this little circle, and you put your finger down and it kind of sends this little hash over it and it authenticates yourself, right, from that perspective. So you mentioned, so you can have companies that use username and password, and then this is like more of a second factor, right, or multi-factor authentication to really make sure you are who you are. Again, I'll talk a little bit more in the next upcoming slides about what MFA or multi-factor authentication or 2FA is. But again, it's another way to authenticate yourself, is to use this key into your computer. I carry one on my keychain, and essentially when I log into, let's say like Gmail, for example, I'll put in my password and then I'll ask you for a security key and you can stick it into your computer. What's nice now is they've been enhanced over the years, where even your smartphone, like this one right here, which I have this one right here, you can take it. So here's my phone, for example, here, you can put it on the back of your phone right here and wave to it, and you can log into whatever authentication or location you have or application that you have and authenticate yourself through your phone, which is nice, right? So that's cool too. And again, everything that I've said to you, nothing technical, right? They're all just common practices or different ways to authenticate yourself. I've said nothing about coding, right? Or no, you have to know about the backend stuff, right? That's something that I have talked nothing about, because these are all common best practices today that IAM practitioners really should know about and help customers really understand. This is how to secure their information or get into a system. So another way that I know some people have seen is this RSA token, or really your phone, right? So these are one-time passwords. Some people call them OTP, or just-in-time password, just a JTP. And again, all this is another way to authenticate yourself. What you do is you register your application. So let's say Amazon, for example, you would log into Amazon, you would register this into your accounts, for example. And then what you would do is say, I want to have an authentication, additional authentication to log into. And really what you're going to do is you'll log in with using password, for example, in Amazon. It'll ask you for your OTP password or your passcode using its numerical value. You open up your phone, you authenticate yourself that way. And then for Amazon, you'll see like a digits, and you have about like 30 seconds or so to put that in. So that's nice too, right? And that 30 seconds is a time-based password, right? So essentially, a good example of how this is really secure, or a better way of securing your identity, is more or less, let's say you're at Starbucks and you're logging into your bank account, which, by the way, just for those who are here, please don't log into your bank account at Starbucks. Don't use their public Wi-Fi. Trust me, you'll be surprised because of all the different hackers that can take your information there. If you're going to do it, please use a virtual private network or VPN before you do that. But there's something called social engineering, which basically says people can kind of hear you or see your password. So what they can do, or if you log into a Wi-Fi that's been hacked, they can log in your information from that perspective, right? And go tell a friend, hey, this person, here's their password, and log in. But it got that second factor authentication, and that password, that passcode, it's only for 30 seconds. By the time that person tries to log in with your account, that password might have changed. It's not going to let them log in. So again, another way, or a way for you to authenticate is that just-in-time password. So For example, like I use like Authy, for example. Yes, Mark, Google Authenticator is great. Google Auth, LastPass has one. You know, Microsoft has one. A lot of the big companies have one. And again, I use Authy because it's fun. It can use it on your desktop and on your phones, and they synchronize, right, which is nice. So again, those are something that's great to have too in terms of that perspective. So absolutely, I'm very happy that a lot of people here are using that because it's definitely the way to go to help really make sure to authenticate yourself. Because again, passwords are easy to crack, right? You know, that takes time, but if you add these additional ways of authenticating yourself, then it's just much more harder for hackers to really steal your identity, if that makes sense. Okay. So once I get in, right, once I authenticate myself, I am who I am. I give you the right credentials to say, yes, I'm Andrew. What's next? What's next is authorization. So when I authorize myself, and really this picture is easy for me to describe this, right? And really what this picture is for me is it allows us to say, okay, once I log in, where am I going? What permissions do I have? What can't do? That's really what this picture is really help conveying, right, for everybody, is really that, is to say, you know, I'm in now, what can I do? So for example, those who are working today, you log into your work computer, right? What can you do? Can you go to the internet? Can you download stuff from the internet? Can you install things on your computer? These are different permissions or authorizations that allow you to kind of do things. And it's nice to really understand or, you know, work with customers to say, hey, you know, what access are you giving? Are you being free-nilly and letting them download whatever they want? Which again, for people who know breaches, phishing attacks happen all the time. All it takes is a click of a link or a download of a PDF or even a JPEG, and hackers have access to your internal system, right? So a lot of companies today really work to kind of, you know, crack down on it, or what they call least privilege model. And really what that means for everybody is, again, you should only have permissions to what you should have work with access to do, or what your job is supposed to do. And that's pretty much it, right? Anything else, and again, I'll talk more about it too, anything else will be more like you get extra permissions or approvals to get that. So I see we have 3 people with their hands raised up. Derek and the 2 phones Zoom caller, just give me 1 second, and I'll definitely allow you guys to talk and definitely ask that question. So give me 1 second, I'll definitely call in guys. So give me 1 second. So again, I have authentication, I've authenticated myself, and then I have authorization, right? Which is now what can I do when I'm in the system today? So again, all this right here, stuff that you can think about or talk to customers about for best practices, but nothing really from a technical background you really need to kind of know from that perspective, if that makes sense. All right. So I think Derek, I think you had a question, right? Let me go to talk. You want to go ahead and ask your question, sir?
Hey, Andrew, I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good.
I forgot to lower my hand from earlier, so I don't really have a question.
Oh, okay.
Keep going. Sorry. Well,
no worries. No worries. Thank you so much. All right. So, so the GP photo, did you have a question? The Zoom caller, did you guys have a question?
Yeah, hi. Sorry, Andrew.
No,
Thank you for having me. I didn't quite work out. Sorry, my name is showing over there as Zoom caller. So my question was with regards to the MFA. I don't know if this is the correct time for it, but essentially I want to ask you is that when you have, let's say, 2-factor authentication, where you got something coming from, let's say, your password, and let's say the second factor is coming from your RSA or your biometric or whatever. Yeah. Are these two, and they're both trying to access a resource behind, are they two part of the same secret, i.e. Shamir's shared secret, or are they programmatically an AND operation that I need to have this and this? And when I match both, then I get access to the resource.
Just to answer your question, it's both, right? So think of it as like two doors ways into where you want to go to, right? So you're using a password, for example, is the first entryway into what you want to do, and then the second factor is more, yes, this is really me. So it's more like a double checking yourself. Hey, are you sure this is really you? Oh yes, I am sure this is me. And then that two together. So basically, think of it as like two keys together. Once those two connect and they really ensure that it's you, that's when you access it.
So that's Samir's Shamir's secret algorithm essentially behind. Is
More
that?
or less, yeah.
Okay.
For the most part.
Is there a like a sort of what do you call it? Some kind of guidance or best practice that when somebody's, for example, I know most of these vendor solutions behind the scenes, they're already pre-built. You don't know whether they're using a Shamir's shared key or are they using an and/or operation or whatever. But is there a guidance or a best practice that one should use either a secret, shared secret, or the programmatic flow? Is there some kind of best practice guidance?
Yeah, there's so many. There's FIDO. So FIDO is a standard organization that kind of helps talk more about how so FIDO is an organization that kind of helps dictate to companies, hey, here's our standard, right? Here's what we want to do. So for example, that YubiKey that I showed you earlier in the slides, they're big about using that as a standard, right? And they have a huge white paper. And what I can do is I can always put up an email, or if you want to just directly email me afterwards or send me a link to LinkedIn, I'll send you those websites that you can look at. They have white papers that talk more about what's the best approach, right, for that two-factor authentication, what's their approach, like the FIDO2 approach from that perspective, what they believe you should be using from that there. NIST, which is a huge organization within the federal government, they offer different ways of MFA2 and the different levels of maturity or different ways of authenticating yourself, or they call it identity proofing. So they call it, they have 4 levels from NIST that describe the different ways and maybe what's the best practice for you. So I'll be more happy to share that with you afterwards. Or again, if you want to send me an email or a LinkedIn message, I'll be more happy to share that with you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem. All right. So I'm going to get to one more and then I'm going to continue. So, hey, how you doing? What's your question? I apologize. I can't pronounce your first name. All right. Let me just finish that, and then we can always talk afterwards. Yes, Ted, 100% right. So once we talk about authentication, talk about authorization, right? Let's talk about this huge buzzword, right? Or this huge feed coming out, right? It's zero trust, right? Again, if you're those who have been around the cybersecurity space, you probably have heard this word or this common word, this buzzword of zero trust, and you're like, what is zero trust, right? What are they talking about, right? So from a zero trust perspective, right? Really, what this is what you're trying to do is, from this picture, is in today's world, right? Or the way that companies have worked today, they have this moat, right? Which is, think of it as like your authentication, right? So I have username, I have password, I have two-factor authentication. That gets me in the door, right? So once I get past this bridge here, now from some companies is you have keys to the kingdom, right? Again, a lot of breaches that you hear today, this is what happens. You have these admin accounts, right, that have access or these passwords that are shared or are not changed. Once this admin person has access, they have free reign to the world, right? Your Colonial Pipeline hack was a username password, and the admin password was something that was reused. They hackers found out, they got full access. What happened? They shut down the system. Gas was off for me, Virginia, for example, in the East Coast, right? That's, again, something that happens commonly here in cybersecurity, and especially in identity space that happens today. So this zero trust or this framework, this is not new, right? This came about years ago as something was a different framework of saying, hey, you know what? How do we really secure our security perimeter, right? So just So just in case we do get hacked, maybe we can stop these hackers, right, from coming in to really do damage, right? So really of zero trust is there are three kind of principles of zero trust, right? The first one is you never trust, always verify, right? Common terms, I think the Russians coined this originally, and I know Reagan used it a lot back in the 80s. But really, again, it's, yeah, you're in, cool. Thank you for authenticating to prove who you are. But then, let's confirm, let's verify you are who you are, right? And how would you do this, right? There are certain ways to do it. You can have them re-authenticate, right? You could, every 30 seconds or every 30 minutes, for example, hey, I'm gonna send you a password, I'm gonna send it to your phone, or re-authenticate using your app, whatever, just to make sure it's you, right, from that perspective. Because a lot of times you're not sure. A good example is, so again, I live in Virginia, and I access my work account. What if for some reason, I'm talking to you guys now, all of a sudden my account is being accessed in like England, for example, right? That's a red flag, because I'm here talking to everybody here. So that's something right there where my company might be like, hold on, Andrew's actually here in Virginia. I just talked to him a half hour ago. Also, his account's logged into England, in England here. What do I do? So maybe I'll have him re-authenticate himself, right? Like that, because sure, he's in, but I want to verify that. And if I can't answer that question, I shut access down, or I stop the account right there, or I flag it, right, and monitor it. So that's kind of what the never trust but always verify really means from that perspective. The second principle is assume there's always a breach, right? Assume that everything is everything there. So again, talking about the least privilege, right? So I want to deny access as much as I can until you give me information to really make sure you really need that. So going back to this picture of this moat, right, or this castle, right? I go in, I authenticate myself, and then I maybe say, oh, I am here in like Virginia at this time. Okay, at this time, I only have access to these certain applications at this time. But then maybe somewhere down the line, let's say like 2 a.m, you can be like, I don't need access to SharePoint. Why should I? So I shut that down, right? I only need to give information as much as I can, or access on a limited basis, until you offer me or give me more information to really say, I really do need this information from that perspective. Because I'm going to assume every single time you're logged in, I'm being hacked, right? Or I'm breached from that perspective. So that's definitely one thing. And then the last one is just really verify explicitly, right? So ability, again, same thing what I mean is, again, we provide access, or we provide, different attributes to really confirm where we are, or from that perspective, right? And if we don't, that's kind of, again, a red flag of saying, wait a minute, something is really wrong here. Maybe I need to, again, re-authenticate, or ask myself again, maybe I should do this, or maybe I want to ping him every like hour or so, just to make sure, this person's there, or I am who I am, for example, right? So I want to make sure time and time again, you're verifying yourself to make sure you are who you are, or I am where I am from that perspective. So, that's definitely a thing. So again, when you hear companies talk about zero trust, right? Google has done a great job. I think it's beyondtrust.com, or sorry, Beyond Corp, excuse me, that they talk about their process and how it took them years and years and years to really develop their engine, right? To kind of, do this process. And they're very open about it. So you can read all about their process, the white papers of what they've learned, and to see, if there's something that, would fit what you're doing. And again, going back originally to what I've said, right? Nothing I just said has anything to do with being technical, right? A lot of this is more best practices, understanding the different standards and the different standards of how that works, and really helping customers understand from that perspective, right? Is understanding basically customers have this problem. Hey, here's some best practices that we can offer for you. And then saying, here's how we can do this model. So again, zero trust, it's more of a framework or a standard. And you kind of just help customers understand that process to get them where they want to be, which is nice. So just a quick notion of zero trust from that perspective. Oh, I skipped one, so apologize for that. I got ahead of myself. So let me go back real quick. So I want to talk about the different branches, right? The different identity access management branches. There are a lot, but I'm going to talk about 3 that are common that you see today. So I have this little cool tree here. It's my identity access management tree. And there's customer identity access management, or CIAM. That's one. A second one is business to business. And then a third one is workforce. I didn't add business to consumer. They're very similar to business to business. And again, just for sake of time, I just kept those three because those are the common ones that I've seen today. So what I'm gonna do is kind of go through each one of them, talk a little bit about each one of these three different branches of identity access management, and then definitely, hopefully, these will resonate with you. Say, if there's something you want to do, definitely work to get that more of that information there. So with COVID and all of us being on lockdown, really customer identity access management, or CIAM, has kind of like exploded, right? And you might be like, what in the world is this? So think of them as like your DoorDashes, your Grubhubs, your Instacarts, your Chick-fil-A's, all these different mobile applications or even websites, right? That you kind of register to order food. What this means is you as customers today, you're registering your account, right? You're giving them personal information about you, your address, your credit card information, your order history. All this is being tracked, right, in these different applications. In the back end or these best practices, there are processes today, right, that kind of use that to say, to kind of monitor you. Those today, or even people who like go to grocery stores, those bonus cards that you get, for example, that's a tracking too, right? And they're managing your identity as a customer perspective. Think of it as a CRM tool, right? So there are different levels of maturity comes to CIAM. There are some where you're very low level, which is just a mom and pop shop that just want to have a website, show you the menu. That's one, right? You're not really doing a registration. You're just showing that, and they call a number to call for order. Then there's ones that are very, very in depth. So for example, Chick-fil-A, for example, you log in, you register your account. They have that saved somewhere in the database. There's practices around how that is, encrypted and managed. So that's something that, again, that's part of it. You'll go and order your food. There's a menu to show you what authorizations you have once you register as a customer. And then from there, it's I'm ordering stuff. Then I'm giving like a credit card information, right, which is very, very, very secure. So all that right there is CIAM in a nutshell. Again, I won't go too in depth, but really what that does is it helps you again that how big of mature levels of CIAM there is. So again, when you log into your Instacart, your DoorDashes, Grubhubs, that's really what that is. And there's so many standards and practices around it too, that if you're looking to get into that kind of market or space, there's a market there for you too, especially with the pandemic and everything going on, and people really using these platforms to order their food, or get their foods delivered or groceries delivered. So the second one I'll talk about is business to business, right? So when you think about business to business, think about it as companies today like Amazon, right? They're such a big company today. And they have probably so many different contractors that come in and they do business with Amazon. So for example, I'll say Salesforce, for example, right, which is one of the top CRM or customer relationship management tools out there. Maybe they need access to Amazon's internal network. So within that, right, you have vendors or contractors, or some people call contingent workers. You have those there. They're sending identities to get access into Amazon's network. They're not employees, they're contractors, right? So the big thing for this is, how do I manage those identities, right? What information do I need from them? How do I manage their access today, right? These are common questions that we get a lot for these business to business in terms of IAM from that perspective, right? So that's how you think of business to business is, again, another easier way to think about it is I have a bakery. And in the bakery, I have a shipping company, I have a supplier, so suppliers, and then maybe again, I have like a Shopify, for example, right? That does all my business transactions there. I need to have it all talk to each other, all being managed, but also not give them too much access so they can't do anything to my business, right? Just enough to do their job. So that's kind of what the business to business is to kind of think about, is all the different ways that you want to manage the identities from that perspective of vendors and suppliers, and how much do you need? And then again, who's responsible, right, to manage these, right? It's kind of what business to business is from that perspective. So just give a little more about that. And then let me just go to the last one real quick, which is workforce. So this is what I really do a lot in my job, a lot of workforce IAM. So what is workforce IAM? So think of it as, again, those who are working today, when you get hired, right, and you come into your job today, companies want you to start working as soon as you start, day one. All that back end to get you the access, your computer, your phone, maybe your monitors, all that IAM can handle, right? That's part of workforce IAM. So on my screen here, you'll see onboarding, transfers, and leavers. So essentially what that means is, how do I manage a user from start to finish? So obviously people, when they get hired, what access do they need from day one? What are some things they don't need? Do we give people something automatically? Do we need to have them request it? If I transfer, if I switch departments, do I keep my access from that department, or does it go away? That's kind of what transfers is from that perspective. And leavers, which is big terminations. If I leave my company, obviously I shouldn't have access to anything more, right? My account should be shut down. So really, there's different policies from that perspective too. So that's kind of what that is from a workforce perspective. Is talking more about the different ways or process of how I manage all that from that perspective, right? So the second part of workforce IAM is granting access via attributes or roles. So you'll hear things called RBAC, which is role-based access control. There's ABAC, which is attribute-based access control, and there's PBAC, which is policy-based access control. All these are different methodologies of how do I grant access, right? So that's kind of what workforce IAM is really thinking about today is, what are the policies? Should I do roles? Should I do entitlements? Again, I'll talk more about that in the next slides of these common terms I'm throwing out to you guys. Should they have birthright roles, which is basically saying that, some people made an example on the chat about banker. If I'm a bank teller, is it the day I start in this location? Do I get this? Do I get access to like the drawer, the computer system that manages the drawer? From that perspective, right? Or do I have to say, no, when I start, maybe I only get access to my computer and email and internet access, for example, right? These can be managed by these roles and entitlements from that perspective. And then anything additional, I'm gonna have to request it separately and get approval from a manager. So all these different policies, even stuff like if I leave a company and I have, say, SOX, for example, says I have to disable a end user account in, let's say, 5 days or 2 days, for example. All these need to be baked into that kind of workflow. And that's what IAM workforce is all about, is really managing users from employee, even from a contractor perspective, right? So it's not just that. In the earlier side, I talked about business to business. If you are a company that want to expand and really manage those contractors from that perspective, again, that's how workforce can kind of handle that or manage that. Those contractors is maybe they're limited, right? Maybe I put a set end date for all contractors based on a end date. So again, all of that is really what workforce IAM is all about. And that's kind of what I do primarily in my job today is workforce IAM. And again, there's so much of a need for these markets, and something, again, nothing technical that I say anything. I don't need to know anything technical from that perspective to help companies understand, right, their processes today, and then help them look at the process and help them refine it with best practices that I've seen in my experience. So again, hopefully what you're hearing from me is, again, a couple of more information or some things I said, I don't need to know Python or coding to know this. I just need to understand people's roles and processes and say, how does the industry do today, right? What's the best way for us to approach this? Because not everybody's just the same. So again, nice to know, but again, nothing technical, right, from that perspective. So let's talk about common terms, right? So on my screen here, you'll see some common terms that I've talked a little bit about today during this webinar about this. I've also, you might have heard in your job, right? So I'll go through each one, give you a little brief background of what they are to give you an idea of what they're talking about. So access requests, the first one. So access request is me or somebody asking for this access for something. Again, it could be, hey, can I have access to download from the internet? Or I want access to SharePoint, or I want access to Salesforce, for example, right? These are requests. And what commonly goes with the request or their workflows is saying maybe there's an approval process baked into that, right? So maybe my manager needs to approve it. But that whole process is me requesting information from, or me asking, hey, can I have access to this? And then the approver or approvers, because you can go to multiple, can approve or deny that request. And then maybe have comments, right? So that's technically what an access request is. Nothing, too crazy about that. There are obviously different methods of doing it. Sometimes you do your phone. There are some IGA applications or identity governance administration applications that can do that. Some people use ServiceNow as an example of another way to ask for access, and then some the tool itself, right? So again, very simple, nothing too crazy, but there's definitely rules around it or different ways of doing access requests that way. So multi-factor authentication. I know I talked about this already. I'm not going too much depth, but really just, it's another way for you to authenticate yourself, right? If there's anything you get out of this webinar is if you're only using your password, I would suggest you definitely go to two-factor authentication, right? Have another way or another method to kind of authenticate yourself, right? This just texting to your phone, that's better than nothing, right? It's not, I wouldn't recommend it. Again, I feel like the apps that you have on your phone, Google Auth, Authy, all of these is better. YubiKey is probably much more stronger because again, it's tied to your fingerprint. So even if you lose it, right, it's difficult for them to kind of use their fingerprint because it's kind of embedded and that kind of, throws a hash. So that's different ways to authenticate yourself. Definitely do a two-factor if you can. And you'll be very surprised at when it comes that don't do this today or don't have a way to go passwordless, which is another common thing that we're trying to get to today is let's get away from using passwords. Let's have other ways to authenticate ourselves from that perspective. So the next one I'll talk about again is least privilege. So again, from a least privilege perspective is I should only have access to things. I should only just give me enough access, right? And nothing more. Common issues or causes for breachings is also the fact that some people who have been at a job for say 20 years, but they change different positions. There's no policies in place to say, you know what, I should take away that account or I should take away those access, right? They just keep it because, like Bobby's been there for years. He knows what he's doing. Let's give it to him, right? But what Bobby leaves and he does it in a hostile way, maybe, and then the access doesn't get removed, right? Bobby can go on the weekend and just wreak havoc. But if I give Bobby just enough privileges, maybe we can isolate that breach, right? Or that isolate him from doing any kind of damage from that perspective, right? And also, humans are humans, right? If I see something shiny and click, I'm gonna click on it. So if you give me access to some things that I should have access to, I'm start clicking on buttons, clicking on links, I can cause a problem, right? So again, if I can stop that or at least give them just enough to do your job, then I kind of mitigate my risk from that level. Because again, in cybersecurity, to me, the biggest thing that I hear about is how do we mitigate risk, right? And that's another way is to provide least privilege from that perspective. So move on. So let's talk about roles. So I talked a little bit about roles again. So think of roles as a bundle of entitlements. And I'll talk more about it, but think of it as this, right? So you have a bank teller and maybe you have a bank manager, right? Those could be two different roles. And each one of those roles could have common, permissions or common authorizations that they can do. But then maybe the bank manager who's, again, in a different level or senior level, he or she might have more responsibilities or more access to maybe payroll, for example, or maybe ways to, maybe do to issue checks, for example, right? That maybe the bank teller can't do. And I'm just making this up just to hopefully help understand from a simple perspective, right? So think of roles as just a bundle of entitlements. And commonly, what I had customers do is we kind of look at like job titles as one way of bundling roles, for example. So again, if I come in and I'm a SQL developer, right? So obviously as a SQL developer, maybe I need access to Outlook, SharePoint, maybe I need access to SQL developer, obviously, right? But maybe that's it. And then maybe if I'm the manager, I have access to more things, right? So that's kind of what roles are from that perspective. So lifecycle management, or LCM, as we call it in Workforce IAM, is the same thing I talked about in Workforce, right? It's the management of a user lifecycle from start to finish. So you have your new hires, you have your transfers, you have your terminations. All of that is the whole management process of that, right? So that's kind of what lifecycle management is that whole process today, is managing a user lifecycle from start to finish. So privileged access management, and I realize I spelled privilege wrong, so I do apologize for that. So we talked about identity access management today. Privileged access management is a subset of IAM. Think of it as more your administrators, right? Your people who have access to servers that can do damage. So you want to handle these people differently than your normal user, right? Because my normal user might have access to common things or simple applications, but my system administrator, this person has keys to the kingdom to go log in and use like root access or sudo access, right? Or they can go in and delete tables. They can change things that can affect millions of customers or even your work today. So we have to have a way of managing them today. So for privilege perspective, there might be certain rules for them. So for example, might have rules saying, you know what, every 30 days, I'm gonna rotate the password, right? Or I might use a different application or system today that will say, you know what, when you're a system administrator, I want you to log in through my application. And when you do that, I'm gonna record your key logging, I'm gonna record your whole session, just so I can see what you do, right? So again, these are different methods, of how we would manage a specific user or admin users from a PAM perspective. So your entitlements, right? Think of your entitlements as single layer or specific types of permissions, right? So maybe it might be, I just have access to SharePoint and that's it. Or maybe I have access to search and edit SharePoint, or maybe they're just different, I have access to Outlook, right? These single layer entitlements are different specific entitlements that you have access to. Some might grant just access to the system itself, some might grant you admin access to itself, right? Some of them could be, again, I use a bank teller as an example. I might have times where, I have Outlook, I have access to the core banking system, and maybe I have access to the badging system that I badge into. Those are single layer entitlements that I can give single to different people or bundle them together into roles from that perspective. So again, think of that as just like different specific permissions or access to particular applications, from that perspective is kind of what entitlements are. Oh God, William, I saw your thing about senior managers leaving passwords. Please tell them to stop doing that. Use a password manager if you have to. Hurts my heart just reading that. So access certification or attestation is ways for managers or application owners to verify, right? Hey, should this person have access to today, right? Sometimes they're done, most companies do it yearly, some do it quarterly, some do it ad hoc if a breach occurs, right? So really what this is you give a list of direct reports or people, and then you say, hey, here's what so-and-so has access to this year. Should he or she have access to this, yes or no? And what we try to do for companies is to say, let's try not to have a rubber stamp everything and give more description so they know what it is that they're reviewing from that perspective, right? Or we tell customers, hey, we'll do a chunk at a time, because I've seen organizations that drop 100 into somebody's lap saying you have a week to do this. So they're going to rubber stamp, approve, which then could cause problems from that perspective. So, from a access certification, attestation perspective, it's more just, hey, are we confirming this person has access to everything? And if they don't, we could either disable that from that perspective, or we notify the application owner saying, hey, you know what? Andrew shouldn't have access anymore. He doesn't work for me anymore. He works for Dave now. Can you shut this off for him? So it gives us more steps or more information or visibility into somebody's access to, again, lower the security risk, or at least have an idea of what's going on. And even from a perspective of a breach does occur, you kind of look back to see what has occurred from that perspective. It's almost like an audit trail if you think about it. So GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulation, is a European type of model. It's more for privacy, right? So this is still kind of fairly new. 2016, I think, is when it was introduced. More for our people in Europe, not in America, unfortunately. I wish it was done more in America. But really, what this is companies have to kind of have consent, or they need to tell you, right, what they're doing with your information, with their data. I unfortunately don't know too much about GRP. I'm still learning about this, but really I know that there's certain principles, right? There's consent. Hey, so for example, if I log into skysports.com right now, right, I'm gonna get a little splash page saying, hey, here's our cookies, and we all love cookies, and here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what I'm using the cookies for. You need to approve or deny you want us to do this, right? From my perspective, you can say no, don't use this for this system, or yes, because some people just don't care, right? Or you go to ESPN.com from here, right? You don't have that, right? So that's my perspective. So so the set of principles: consent, contract, legal obligation, vital interest, public task, and legitimate interest, right? So again, it's really helping them mitigate breaches, right? And be more transparent with customers. why are we using your information here? Or here's what we're using it for. You have the right to say yes or no for me to use my identity to like, share me a cookie or for you to access this, right? So that's kind of what GDPR is. I really hope it gets more into the states, for example, because I think it'd be great. Because I think one of the biggest things that you hear today is privacy regulations, right? So I know people are big on that one. So again, this is a step, right, in the right direction for us to kind of be more transparent to the customer about how their data is being accessed today from a data perspective. So let's talk about governance, and I have 10 minutes left, so I'll try to go through this really quickly. So governance. So governance, think of governance as policies, right? Or different policies of how I manage things, right? So again, I talked a little bit about LCM, right? What I talk about when it comes to governance is how do I want to manage users? How do I want to give them access? What other policies align? What are the rules that I want to bake in? Do I want to use an application to manage all this, right? That's what governance is, right? So again, who do I have access? What do I have access to? And what are you using it for? So a great way to describe that is this nice picture here that I took from SailPoint is I have an identity, right? Do I have access to SAP? Do I have a privilege account? Do I have access to a SaaS model, a SaaS account, which is on a cloud? Do I have access to, to my devices? All that information, there are rules about how do I get access to that? Should I have access to that? And then if I do, how do I identify that access and to let a manager know, a administrator to know from that perspective? All that whole process is kind of what governance is that whole management process today from that perspective. So it's a big thing today is that whole governance process and policies. And a lot of what I do today, my job is kind of able to help companies understand what is their governance process. And if they don't have one, how do we build that, right? Which includes certifications too, or ways to access applications from that perspective. So again, coming to IAM, you want to do things that will make you successful. Learning governance, learning the different policies behind that is something that is huge for people to really learn that to help you get into the space. It's kind of understanding what identity access management governance is and how that works out for companies and customers. So let's talk about the major players we have here in IAM. So some of them you might have heard of me talk about. So you have your SailPoints, you have your Saviynt, Oktas, Pings, ForgeRock. These are IGA or identity governance and administration organizations, right? Again, they help manage user lifecycle or workforce IAM. Some of these other companies do offer CIAM, for example, Okta, Ping, and they also do business to business too, and business to consumer, right? They all offer that same whole market or niche that they can do all that. There are some other ones that you don't see here. One Login is another one. Omada is another one. There are so many different companies that do this, right? But these are the common big ones. If you were to look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant, which is no longer in existence, they're the leaders of the industry, but then there are other ones too. But these are the common ones that you might have heard of or seen about that talk about or do IGA from that perspective. So then you have PAM, right? So sorry, I'm going to go too fast. So you have your PAM or your privileged access management. You have your CyberArk, your Beyond Trust, Dichotics. These are applications or companies that handle privileged access, right? So I mentioned earlier about organizations that offer or do like key logging, right? Or I'm gonna make you go through my own VPN tunnel, and I'm gonna record you when you do it. Or I'm gonna rotate your passwords. All these is managed by these. These are some companies. There are more out there too that do a PAM. These are the three big ones that kind of help manage your privileged access management from that perspective and really kind of help you keep your security people or your higher administrators at bay, right? And keep them honest. So again, you have your IGA people, end users, and system administrators can use like SailPoint, Saviynt, and Okta. But then for more of those privileged users, your CyberArk, your Dichotics, and your Beyond Trust, those are your more bigger players that kind of work in that space. So let's talk about, how do I get started, right? So I talked a lot about, the background, different authorizations, authentication, zero trust, talked about common terms. I talked about the different branches. Now that I give you a little bit of background of the different features or different ways that IAM is, now let's talk about, how do you want to learn more? Like, what can I do? So what I want to describe to everybody is this, right? So there's so many organizations. There's Women in Identity, which is an amazing organization. I met some of their co-founders. Pamela Dingle is one of them. She's a great resource for Microsoft. It's Women in Identity, right? They are a nonprofit. They help. It's a lot of women come and they talk about how do we, grow women in the technical space, especially in identity. Great webinars. They have great leadership, and their white papers are amazing to talk about. Again, women, how do we succeed in IAM? How do we get there? Wonderful. If you're a woman looking to get IAM, definitely look at their great individuals, great information on the website. I'm part of ID Pro. They're a newer organization, but really they bring a lot of our practitioners together, and we kind of talk about, right, identity space. You have your CISP, you have your pen hacker, your pen testers, PHE, all these different subgroups, right? But identity really didn't have one at the time, right? It wasn't as big, it's such a niche market. So ID Pro came together 3 years ago, I believe, by two co-founders. Kind of, again, how do we build practitioners? How do we get more people on board? How do we listen to people with common problems today and help each other be successful? And what they also did was they also built a body of knowledge that's free on the website to kind of explain the different information. So if you want a more in-depth of what I talked about in this webinar, go to their website. On one of their drop-down boxes is their body of knowledge. And in there, you'll find so much information about identity, the different types of identity, authentication, OAuth, those different ways. It's a great resource and written plain English, right? Nothing too crazy that you have to really go, man, what does that mean? The writers are all written by people within ID Pro. So they are written, and they have a great extensive editorial system. They edit everything, but they're great, and they have some great information there. And then the last is your Identity Defined Security Alliance. They're great. White papers, webinars, standard practices, resources about different surveys they did. They're all on there. So definitely look at them too. They're a great resource. A lot of companies like CyberArk are sponsors of them too, so they give that information for you. Sorry, I'm going a little fast. I apologize. I'm running out of time. So there's two good media platforms. There's Identity at the Center, run by two great guys, Jim and Jeff. They're experienced practitioners. They bring different people, talk about identity, talk about different issues, right? Actually, I found doing this webinar through one of their guests, which is Paul Lanzini, who's a board member. I listened to his podcast on that one, and that's what got me interested in doing this for everybody. So it's on podcast, available at all of them. Great resources, talk about a lot more what I talk about there. And then, of course, your Identity Today is another one too, fairly new, but they're awesome too. Great resources there. So conferences, Identiverse, Gartner has one, and then meetups, right? There are, again, 3 different places that have offered that for you too. There's certifications you can do. ID Management Institute has one certification, and of course, CI Pro, which is ID Pro's brand new certification. I'm actually going to take that in probably sometime October, November. There are also certifications from that perspective. And I think what's great is their co-founder, Sarah, tweeted this to me this morning saying, guess what? Their exam, nothing coding, nothing technical, right? All 150 questions is about, do you know identity? What's some of their best practices today? All the information is on their BABOK or their body of knowledge from that perspective. And that's it. There's no such thing as coding from that perspective. So again, in summary, I really do hope that the information that I gave today, gives you a better idea of the different flavors of IAM today. And maybe one of those markets is what you want to get into to be successful. Because again, I didn't come from a technical background. I came from a business functional background. And that's really what makes successful today, is really understanding the best practices and helping my customers be successful today. And with that being said, open for questions. I do apologize, I ran a little bit over.
All right, thank you for that, Andrew. So there is one, there was one question that was reoccurring, and that was whether this webinar was going to be posted. The answer is yes. Well, assuming Andrew is okay with it. All of our webinars are generally uploaded to our YouTube page. So if you just go to YouTube, look up CSMP, you'll see all of our past webinars. So just wanted to let everyone know that. And so there's an outstanding question out there for you, Andrew. I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to answer it. It was around your career, coming from a business background. This person wanted you to share your story and experience, I guess, how you got to
yeah. Oh, sure. So I'll do it real quick. So I've been a business analyst almost my entire life as a tester. I was doing more of a financial background. So finance is where I came from. The systems that I help from a business perspective were financial. I got hired to do a BA and they're like, oh, hey, we're doing this thing called identity access management. Here's SailPoint, go learn it. I'm like, okay, thanks. How do I learn it? Here's YouTube. Oh, okay. And I just started to read and see what was supposed to, what the whole point of it was from that perspective. What really kind of took me into this career was more, I went to work for a bank as a contractor. And then I had some great guys, Eli Anderson and his team took me under wings and taught me, why am I asking these questions? Why are we doing this today? Why are we, securing all this information there? And from that point on, that's kind of when I fell in love with IAM. Like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my career. And I learned from books, going to conferences, and really, just learning on the job with other people who have done this in their experience and see what they do. And that's how I got into IAM. So technically, I fell into it, if that makes sense from that perspective.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we have another one that just came up. Actually, someone was asking about any specific solution for specific cases. I'm not sure I understand this question, but it sounds like they were interested in understanding what specific technology out there, whether that's, I don't know, beyond trust or whatever privilege identity access management tools are out there. I'm guessing this person is looking for some kind of use case and specific vendor.
So my response to that is, it depends on your customer, right? Some companies today, some organizations are more expensive than others. It really depends on your organization of what they want, what's in their budget, right? And really understanding the requirements, of what they want, how mature they want to get in their time frame will kind of dictate the different vendors. Because a lot of the vendors today, like the CyberArks, from an IG perspective, right? Your SailPoints, your Savients, they all commonly do the same thing. What they offer, they just might have a different way of doing it. For example, Savient is strictly cloud, right? They offer their some cloud where today SailPoint can do both on-prem and cloud, right? From that perspective. So, and yes, Derek is right. It's not a product, it's a program, right? I can use a tool to manage all that, right? But what's the policies behind that tool and what's the requirements? Because again, I can use a simple, like say Oracle has a product too, right? That's something that I want to be able to customize my application. Again, these questions and responses from your customers will help you dictate what vendor you want to go with, right? And what they offer. Because again, most vendors, they offer the same thing. Some offer a little bit more, some offer a little bit less. And then it really goes on to, again, what you want to achieve from that perspective. And again, what's the budget? There.
Okay, I know we're running short here on time. Someone asked if you could talk a bit about device identities. I'm guessing
Oh, sure. So bring your own devices. Again, that's definitely something that most companies are having, especially in the COVID times, right? You have things like iTunes, like Intune, I think is what's called, where you have these management or MDMs, management device managements, where they can have people authenticate or log in or drop it onto your phone, right? Saying, hey, you know what? For you to access company information on your phone, I want you to register your phone, right? So now your companies have that device information on their database, or they have it access to. They kind of know what you can access from your device. So let's say Outlook, for example, your company email, but then there are different rules that can be applied to it, right? So for example, if we know that your phone got hacked, for example, and you lose your phone, I could send a quote, or I'm sorry, I could send a signal to basically nuke your whole phone, right? But these are different rules that the device management can do from that perspective. Is again, you're registering your account, so you're providing authentication of your account. You're using whatever to use that through a portal, for example. Company portal is common. And then what authorizations do I have once I register my account or register through my phone, right? Again, you might be able to access just internet, just like your company email, but then some people might access more things, right? So that whole process there today of bring your own devices, there are different tools that kind of manage that and different rules behind that. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And let's take two more. Wow, questions are coming in. Well, I know we're definitely over time, but if people want to stick around, that's okay. Andrew, here is one that seems a little bit lengthy. Let's see if we can read it together. So this person says, I have RBAC already for functionality within app.
Mhm.
But in my case, I have shipments, need to restrict shipment visibility to particular people within the larger app users globally. Currently, we add a list of users to the shipment for now, but looking for something more standardized and easier to control, maintain either programmatically or an
Mhm.
admin support group. Any pointers?
So what you can do is, if you want, so there's something called this 80-20 rule, right? Or the I think it's the Paleo effect. What you can do from that is, let's say, for restricting access, what you can do, in my opinion, is maybe look at what's common, right, across those shipment people, like the list people, right? But within those, what are ones that are, I guess, more restrictive, and maybe what you do is strip those out and make those requestable, right? And say, you know what, these common ones like access to the shipping stuff are there. I'll give that to you. Not a problem. Not a threat. But maybe something that's more specific that they can do more intricate work into that application. Maybe you want to take that out, right? And do more of saying, you know what, I'm gonna make that person request that access, right? And then you have more visibility and approval to grant that access from that perspective. That's just one way, top of my head, I can think of to kind of help manage that, right? And keep common access there, but then just strip out the more privileged access, or if that makes sense, or more ones that are more greater levels of control on the application, and make the people request it.
All right. So I I still see a lot of questions coming in. I think if people are part of our group, we do have a Slack community out there. If people want to go there, ask some questions, that's fine. I think we can take one more question. And this next one here talks about zero trust.
Mhm.
And they're saying, zero trust, it's a great idea for security professionals, but it might seem a little bit excessive, when you have to authenticate every 30 minutes. Any ideas on how we can emphasize the importance of IAM to our customers? Also, how can we find a good balance between security and convenience?
That is the common theme in IAM. Not gonna lie, I hear that all the time. So I ask customers this question. Again, I live in the DC area, right? So would you like to be on the front page of the Washington Post? And ask them, that you got hacked and breached. It costs you much more money, okay, to handle a breach from a logistical standpoint, from a customer perspective, from litigation and lawyering perspective. So a lot of times I ask that question. I ask customers questions like, yeah, I understand it can be excessive. I get that, right? But you don't want to be on the front page of the Washington Post to be like a breach. T-Mobile just to say that they got breached, right? I'm not sure how they got breached, but they got breached. Imagine the amount of customers that they're going to lose, or the data or the amount of information they have to give. Hey, we're going to give you free credit monitoring, whatever, right? That costs money, right? It's I mean, it's a hard balance, right? So sometimes what I think of, in my opinion, is you can have maybe like a feedback session, how much is just not too much, but enough, right? Because again, I get it. You don't want to stop people from working, right? But maybe it goes back to the different rules, right? It's okay. You know what? 9 to 5, no problem, everything's there. But after hours, maybe that's when I start to really, look at authenticating people more often, like that. It really just depends on the different market you're in, different customer that you have, and maybe just get feedback from feedback from not just InfoSec, but working together with other business units to say, what is a happy medium between the two to really, authenticate that way. So, I don't think it's an easy answer. I think it's more of a case by case basis. I mean, and Andre, I don't disagree with you, sir, on that at all. I definitely don't disagree with the risk management and risk appetite. But I guess from my experience, right, you know, for most people, that's what they see, right, is the loss of customers, loss of people. That's monetary, right? This is here to make money, right? Again, this is my personal opinion, you know, but I definitely agree it's not just a cost, but identity, right? Is you want to manage your people, right? OPM had a hack 2014, my plus, and I'm government contractor, right? That's out there, right? That hurts, you know, but that's not just, that's again, as Pat says, reputation, right? You know, I think just it's the fact that identity is today, data mining and identity mining is such a big thing that to me, the most important thing, you know, is managing your customers, your identity from that perspective. So I think there's always a cost associated with that, perspective. So again, you know, again, my opinion, you know, is a lot of times is as customers is again, you know, how much is it worth to you, you know? But I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
All right, I think this is probably a good place to wrap it up. I did drop the link to our Slack channel. So feel free to join there. Feel free to drop some questions in there.
Yep.
And Andrew, thank you very much for coming on our platform today to talk about identity and access management. I think this is a great topic, and it is absolutely an important area in cybersecurity. Personally, I'm in cybersecurity consulting, and I can tell you that every client is scratching their head on how to just deal with it, how to handle it. But thank you again. Thank you for coming, and we're hoping to see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Again, everybody, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a Slack, LinkedIn, message me, you know. I would love some feedback from you too. You know, if this is helpful to you, do you want more? I'll be happy to come on again and talk more depth on some things. Please feel free to send me some feedback. You know, I'd be more happy to listen to them. And if you tell me, you know, dude, you know, that was helpful, whatever, anything to make it better, because I'm all about, you know, I just want to educate people and bring more into the identity space. I'm hopeful that this is the first step for a lot of you to say, you know what, I want to be an IAM too. This is a great start. Tell me more. I'd be more happy to come back and really talk more in depth about specific topics or things in depth if needed, because we need you. You know, we need people that are great at communicating, understanding business practices, to help drive identity, because identity is not going anywhere. It's just getting bigger, bigger, bigger every year. So the more we can come in this area, the more happier I am. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, that's fun. Thank you. Thank you. I'm definitely adding you on LinkedIn right now. All right, everyone. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. Thank you.
Cheers.